G'day ladies and gents, and welcome back to IL-2 Great Battles with Mags, and today we're going to be taking a quick look at the M4 Sherman. Specifically, this is the M4A2 that was deployed as a Lend-Lease tank starting in late November 1942, and the skin we've got on it today is actually the Lend-Lease transport markings. These were the markings that all M4A2 Shermans were painted in when they were transferred Lend-Lease to the Soviet Union, before they were eventually repainted and marked up with Soviet markings. Now, the exterior model for the tank is extremely well done, but we'll take a closer look at this in just a moment. Before we get into that, the other thing we're going to be taking a look at in this particular video is the map itself, because along with the patch that released the Sherman into the wild, the Pokhorovka map, which is the high-detailed map designed for tank combat, the first rendition of that has also been released. So anyways, let's jump into the driver's seat. So, starting off, we have the forward scopes. Now, there's actually two. The main scope is actually really large, as you can see, and it's got a lot of space behind it. And then we've got this smaller scope that activates when you close the armoured panel for the upper scope. Much more limited field of view, much more difficult to see through, but gives you a little bit more protection. How much protection? I'm not entirely sure. Since they're both scopes, I don't think it would make a huge amount of difference overall. Anything big enough to get through one is probably going to get through the other. You can see the shells back there in the basket, and we've got the boxes here for the 50 cal. As you burn through the 50 cal ammunition, you will start chewing those up. Actually, they may, I take that back, that may be for the 7.62, although I can't read any markings on them. Anyways, yeah, transmission, we've got the shifter. We've got the center instrument cluster here with the compasses and headings. These look oddly like aviation gauges more than anything you would expect to find in a tank, but that doesn't surprise me all that much. As I understand it, a lot of US tanks actually shared instrumentation with aircraft simply due to the volume of aircraft instrumentation that was actually being built at the time. It was readily available and it did the job. So, anyways, I'll just get myself into position here, and there we go, hatch open, so we can actually take a look out the front of the tank. I love the rough finish on the turret. You can see it's been cast, and it's not perfectly smooth, it's not perfectly polished, at least not in comparison to the gun. It looks weather beaten, and you can see all the welds, the weld lines. Yeah, I'm really happy with the detailing on the Sherman. It looks great. So yeah, that's the field of view out of the driver's hatch, so let's button her back up, and let's take her for a little drive, because I love watching the controls here. Alright, yep, we're lined up and good to go. Second, up into third, and hands off the controls. And back into first. I love the animation for this. This is great. Work that clutch pedal. So yeah, the driver's positions detailing is very, very nice. And with the field of view from the scope, this is actually going to be one of the more pleasant tanks to drive, in my opinion. You can see really well out of the driver's position in comparison to other tanks. And so, the gunner's position. Now, this is a little bit different to other tanks. One, you've got this massive periscope straight to the front, allowing you to see out of the tank, which is fantastic. You can actually spot what is going on in front of you. But, if you... I'll see if I can get an angle here. There we go. You can see the markings on the small ring to the right. That's your scope. The Sherman doesn't have a traditional scope with magnification and full adjustment on it. It's just that ring with some preset notching, and if we jump into the zoom for it, there we go. Once you're in, it operates like a scope in any other tank, but you cannot, I'm hitting the buttons here, you cannot change the distance calibration, you can't adjust it, there's no zoom option, this is what you see. Again, this is unsurprising. US doctrine, tanks weren't designed to engage tanks at long range. Tanks with support for infantry, tank destroyers would engage tanks. So anything the Sherman would be engaging would be usually within rifle range to the infantry or a little bit further beyond. So A high magnification scope for long-range shooting against armoured vehicles wasn't really a requirement. A good field of view to be able to see what was going on, however, very much was. And the turret is fully controllable, obviously, from this position. It's a little bit hard to aim, but you can do it. Having a look around inside, you've got the gun breech to our left, of course. That's the commander's position. We'll take a look in there. Binocular, spare periscopes, and just basic trimmings marked out inside. The turret controls are of course fully animated, so whenever you move the turret, the controls will all move appropriately. But that's really it here. So from here we jump over to the commander's position. Now this is a bit interesting. The commander can actually share the forward-looking periscope with the gunner in order to see what is going on out the front of the tank if you can lean down low enough. But you'll notice there is no cupola with a good set of periscopes in here. We've only got this one forward scope. We've got one here to the right, which is in a really good position. We can see a lot of what is going on out the right. Nice wide field of view, but it does only look in one direction, although we can lean around it a little bit to see what's going on. And there's one over here on the far side of the tank, which again, you can see out of, but it's a long distance away. It's relatively difficult to actually see through. That's it. Now, the radios are also in the back as well, but I'll come to that in a moment, because that's an interesting one. But the difference here is, once you step out of the turret, the commander does get control of the 50 cal. Now, the 50 cal in the options menu is meant to be the anti-aircraft gun. Infantry are present, obviously, in IL-2, and so you will be able to use it against them, but it's meant to be for air defense. I've tried to use this thing against air defense once before, and it's, well, you can definitely get the angle up, but trying to aim it against an aircraft is a pain in the ass, to be perfectly honest, so I'm not sure exactly how much this is going to be used outside of a way of designating targets for the gunner in a multi-crew situation. It does sound really meaty when you fire it, though. The animations, though, and you see the dust clouds popping up. Just get a belt in there, and there we go. They're clearly still using the animation for bullet impacts on the ground for 50 caliber guns from an aircraft. They're not using a high detailed version for tanks, so they do look a little low frame rate on the animations, and yeah, it would be nice to see some a tank version of those bullet impacts. It was a little bit nicer to look at, just for when you're in a tank. Obviously the animation there doesn't matter so much when you're in an aircraft flying at high speed. You haven't got enough time to look at it, but in a tank you're going to be seeing it fairly prominently. And other than that, we've got a fantastic view out of the top of the Sherman, as would be expected. The Sherman is a surprisingly tall tank. Until you see one in real life, you don't actually realize how big these things are. They're a 30-ton tank when empty, so they're actually quite large, and they do set up fairly high. Alright, so that is the commander's position done. Next up we have the Bal Gunners Position, and this is an interesting one. So, first things first, we get exactly the same scope setup as the driver. So we've got the main large scope, and we've got this smaller secondary scope. So exactly the same hatch system, exactly the same periscope system as the driver. However, I'll get the gun to activate here, you don't get an aiming reticle. Unless you've got markers and aiming assists enabled, you do not get an aiming reticle for the Bal Gunners Position at all. There is nothing to give away where you're aiming it. You just sort of gotta look and see where the impacts are and follow your own traces to work out exactly where you're shooting. Your field of view overall is actually kind of great. Not so much on the lower scope. As you can see, it's a bit limited overall, but it does give you a good enough view at what's directly in front of the tank. But the upper scope is actually pretty good. But you're sort of aiming via, well, just guesswork and observation rather than down any kind of actual sights. Now, the bit that's interesting about this particular position is actually the configuration for how IL-2 is going to do its crew members. The crew members configuration was supposed to be driver, main gunner, commander, and bow gunner, machine gunner, radio operator. The problem is in the Sherman, the radio is in the back of the turret for the commander to use. So in the Sherman, the bow gunner, the only job he has is to use the 7.62 mounted in the nose. That's it. He has no other purpose inside of this tank. He has no other controls. He has nothing else that he can look at. This is his sole role, so it's not a particularly interesting position in the Sherman. Anyways, let's take a look at this map. Now, this is going to take a little bit of explaining. The new Pokrovka map is designed for tanks, and as such is at a higher detail level. However, to keep the map large enough for aircraft as well, only the area that is inside this grey square, at least currently, is in that high detailed finish. And you can see this when we zoom in on the map. If we look over here at the topography lines for the standard resolution IL-2 air maps, you can see the gaps in between them. Now if we zoom over here and look at those same topography lines and detail lines for the high detailed area, you can see how much higher detailed they are. Now as I understand it, this map isn't 100% finished yet. It's just finished to a point where it can begin testing amongst players, which is why it's been released. And even though it's only 4 large grid boxes, each of those grid boxes is 10 kilometers by 10 kilometers, so you're looking at 20 by 20 or 400 square kilometers total inside of that box. And if you happen to go outside of it, you can still drive around outside of the map. You'll just be driving around in the standard resolution map rather than in the high detailed area. So that's Great Battles' solve for the problem of having aircraft and tanks mixed while trying to keep a high detailed map for the tanks without, overloading your computer if you don't happen to have a top end one. Anyways, let's take the Sherman for a drive. Now, as I said before, driving the Sherman around is actually kind of great. I do love that gear shift animation. The large view provided by the periscope means it's so easy to actually see where you're going in comparison to other vehicles. It is much, much, much easier to drive this thing around than it is some of the other tanks. Not so much when you've got the small scope out, although it definitely does the job, but I personally don't see any real reason to use it most of the time. I think I'll be sticking to the main scope. Having said that, once I actually get shells starting to be fired in my general direction, I'm probably going to pop them both closed quite quickly. But yeah, otherwise, fantastic tank to drive. Probably one of the best tanks in IL-2 up until this point to drive. I don't feel like I have to open the driver's hatch in order to be able to see where I'm going like I do in some of the other tanks. The T-34 comes to mind, and actually Tiger does to a certain point as well. She's got a lot more scopes, but you can't see so much out of them. Now, one other thing I forgot to show is this. We do have fully functional internal lighting, so doing night missions is entirely possible in this tank and being able to see what's going on inside. But more than that, we also have fully functional external lighting, and the headlights do actually work on this tank. So, turn it back on. So we've got the tail lights here, so those that are behind us in the tank column can actually see where we're going, and we can see the headlights on the ground there, and they do function. They do light up buildings, other vehicles, trees, and the ground. They also make you very noticeable, particularly in dark environments, but if you need to sab them on in order to be able to see where you're going, they do work perfectly well. We'll turn off. There we go, onto the grass, and you can see the headlights lighting up the grass in front of us. So yeah, fully functioning headlights on the tanks means you can do full-on night missions and actually use the lights as they will be used. Actually need to change scopes there. There we go, that's the one I was after. But I've got to say, he's bloody cool. I really do want to put together a mission. I know it'll be terrible for YouTube, it'll be dark, but put together a mission that is, a nighttime tank mission, an assault on a base or an assault on a convoy or something along those lines, to see if we can get a whole bunch of players into multi-crew these things, and yeah, actually do it in the dark. The track detailing is also, get an angle on here from the grass, which I probably do, is also fantastic. IL-2's been doing fantastic things in regards to the detailing of the tracks of the tanks and how the road wheels all work and the suspension functionality. It all looks amazing. And yeah, nothing changes here, although it does seem to throw up, the animation of the tracks does seem to throw up an awful lot of dirt in front of the Sherman whenever you drive on anything, including paved roads. So, I love the fact that you can see the controls down from the bottom of the hatch as well. But yeah, the tracks do throw an awful lot of dirt up. So, I think that might be a bit overdone, maybe. Now, I do want to fire the guns a couple of times in anger here. Unfortunately, because the Pokerovka map is so new and it's in its sort of first iteration, there's only a few targets that are set up inside of the quick play, which is what I'm using to quickly run over the Sherman here today. So, the closest target that we have available is an airfield, which would appear to be just entering the outskirts from here. Now, this is probably going to go pretty badly for me, as most of those flak guns will be 88mm anti-aircraft guns. So, while they're not designed for busting tanks, they will make short work of the Sherman. And we're actually a shitload closer than I actually thought we were. There we go, convoy of tanks just over here. I'm cheating a little bit using the external views. Let's seal her up. Alright. Let's see if we can get some trucks here to shoot at first. Now, as I said, the sight on the M4A2 is fixed. It has no adjustment, so you've just sort of got to... That's 2. Yeah, sort of... And my engine's failed, so I sort of knew that was going to happen. Jesus Christ, that just twisted the tank. Come on, there we go, that's one of them down. Now, which one of yous is the other one? That's a little long. How much left? Oh! No, that was from the left. Oh, you! Ow! Stop! Stop shooting my goddamn tank. There. That's better. And yeah, Flak 37, so 8.8 centimeter anti-aircraft guns with dual roll anti-armor capability. So the Sherman's already knackered. Can't see any more of them. Oh, we do have some planes taking off. Oh, this would be beautiful if I can get this shot. Oh, that was close. Anyways, let's pop one of these trucks and take a look at the outside of this thing. Oh, bit high. And there we go, I feel much better now. Anyways, let's take... oh, damn. Come on. Nah, she's not going to start. Look at the damage. But then again, multiple hits from a Flak 37 fired directly at armor, and she's still able to shoot, even if she can't move. It's not horrible. No, I'm afraid she's not going to start. Anyways, ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed this brief look at the M4A2 Sherman in IL-2 Great Battles, and thank you very much for watching. Apologies to my regular viewers for not having too many videos out. I have just entered into the school holidays, or the first break after term 1 for my course, so I do now have a little bit more time on my hands. It's been a little bit hectic over the last week doing assessments, so I'm a bit behind on videos, but we will have a couple more coming up over the next couple of days. And until next time, remember to click that like button, share and subscribe if you would like to see more. And as always, drive smart, drive safe, and I'll catch you on the battlefield.